This episode is brought to you by Hasa. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the Bottom Feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to compare a saltwater pool or a pool with a saltwater generator to a pool without one if you're going to use chlorine. So I guess this is a saltwater pool versus chlorine pool podcast. I'll go over the pros and cons of both, and you can make an educated decision of which way you want to go with your primary sanitizer, either the saltwater generator or chlorine. Join my coaching program and take your pool service to the next level. Connect with other pool pros in your area, gain valuable knowledge, and transform your business with personalized one-on-one advice from me. With over 36 years of experience, I'm here to help you succeed like never before. Learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Of course, a saltwater generator does produce chlorine and injects it into the pool, so it is technically a chlorine pool. What I'm trying to kind of divide here or give pros and cons of is using, chlorine as in liquid chlorine, cal hypo, trichlor tablets, dichlor, any kind of chlorine you're going to manually add to the pool versus a saltwater generator pool or saltwater pool where the salt is made at the pool side and you're not using these products. So, of course, the first thing is how to kind of define these pools. So I think a chlorine pool should be defined as a traditional system of using chlorine, liquid tablets or granular chlorine to sanitize the water. Why do you need the water sanitized? Well, there's a lot of stuff that can be in the water that can be harmful if you're swimming in it. If you think about it like this and logically think about a pool is an unnatural body of water. If you look at a lake or a pond or any kind of body of water that's natural, there's some flow to it. There's, of course, algae in it. There could be bacteria in it as well. And if you're going to be swimming in your backyard pool, you want to make it as free and clean as possible. And so we use sanitizer to kill pathogens, viruses, bacteria, whatever can be found in the natural environment in the water. And that's why backyard pools usually look blue. They can be green, of course, if they're neglected, and they can turn green very quickly as well. And you don't have mosquito larvae swimming in a blue pool or a clear pool that's sanitized properly. So that's kind of why we need a sanitizer. So back to that, a chlorine pool, I'm going to say, is a traditional system of adding chlorine to the pool, where a saltwater pool basically uses a saltwater chlorine generator, saltwater chlorinator to convert salt into chlorine. It's kind of how they make liquid chlorine at the factory, except it's being made right there in your pool's backyard. So a saltwater pool is not a traditional pool because you don't have to add the chlorine to the pool, but it is sanitizing the pool with almost the same exact, or I should say, very similar to liquid chlorine. If you're going to compare two chlorine types, it's most similar to liquid chlorine than cal hypo or trichlor tablets or dichlor. So what are the pros and cons of a saltwater pool versus a traditional chlorine pool? I would say that a saltwater pool, some people say that the water feels softer, and of course there's lower maintenance with a saltwater pool, and you're not adding the harsh chemicals. You don't have to purchase them, put them in your backyard, which is nice. You don't have chlorine laying around all over the place. You don't have to go to the pool store. You're not spending money on chlorine during the season, which is a significant savings. But as I always say with a saltwater generator, it's not going to be cheaper to go with a saltwater generator in the season over a chlorine pool for a number of reasons. But I'll touch on that maybe later when I talk about the costs and the pros and cons. Now, as far as a chlorine pool, of course, it's going to be a lower initial cost because you're not going to be buying the saltwater generator and having it installed. So that's going to save you, $1,500 to $2,000 to start right there. The maintenance, I think, is something that you're going to, of course, have to manually take care of either through a pool service or yourself adding chemicals to the pool. And this is something that, of course, you're going to have to buy the chemicals if you're doing it yourself. Go to the pool store, bring it back, store it there, and use it. These can be pretty harsh chemicals, and a lot of times people don't want to deal with this, so they just hire a pool pro to do either a chemical-only service, which is a good idea, by the way, if you are a do-it-yourself kind of person and you like maintaining the pool, but you don't really want to deal with the chemistry or adding chemicals. Hire a pool service as a chemical-only. Stop, and they can go there, check the chemicals, balance it, add what's needed, and take it in their truck with them so there's no chemicals in your backyard. So that's a kind of happy medium between a saltwater generator and a traditional chlorine pool. If you have a pool service that can add the chemicals for you, there's no storage in your backyard, and it's one of those things where it makes your life easier, and it's fairly affordable to have chemical-only service versus a full service stop for the pool professional. So that's an option that's kind of in the middle there. Of course, a lot of people don't have time to do their own pool, so they'll just kind of let the pool service company do everything for them, which is perfectly fine as well. Let me focus on one con, I think, with one particular chlorine type, and that is trichlor tablets. And I'm just going to focus on the odor of the trichlor tablets. So be careful when you're using these where you store them. If any water gets on them, it turns into basically mustard gas because there is cyanuric acid in there. When you have cyanuric acid or acid mixed with chlorine, you're going to and water, I should say. That's an important element. Don't want to forget that. And in a closed environment, like if you have the lid partially open, it rains, it gets wet, and then you close the lid, and you open that lid again, you're going to have a similar chemical compound to mustard gas, which can be overpowering, could cause lung damage, and could almost knock you out. I've had experience with this where I just couldn't catch my breath after being exposed to this. So that's one hazard with a chlorine pool versus a saltwater pool where you wouldn't have that problem. Liquid chlorine is pretty benign. There's not an odor to it, and it's pretty safe. Cal Hypo, the same thing. But any trichlor product, either the trichlor granular, trichlor tablets, or trichlor shock, it's going to have a very strong chemical odor. I wouldn't say liquid chlorine and Cal Hypo would have that problem, but of course trichlor will have that odor problem. And I guess since I'm touching on some side effects, I should also mention this, that every chemical has a byproduct. So for Cal Hypo, you have calcium added to the pool. For trichlor and dichlor, you're adding cyanuric acids to the pool. And for liquid chlorine, you're adding salt to the pool. Of course, a saltwater generator uses salt to make the chlorine, and you're going to have salt as the main byproduct of the saltwater generator. Let's break down some cost here. I'm just going to use trichlor as my example here so that you can get an idea of some cost breakdown. Let's say you're using trichlor as one of your sanitizers, and you get a 50-pound bucket for $200, which is pretty fair on the market right now. That 50-pound bucket probably should last you at least a season and a half or 2 seasons based on your pool size. And then you're going to supplement that with either Cal Hypo or liquid chlorine. I mentioned the byproducts. You don't want to exclusively use trichlor because you're adding way too much cyanuric acid to the water at that point. So you want to do a 50-50, probably half trichlor, half liquid chlorine or Cal Hypo. Liquid chlorine is preferred in my area because of the price and because it's highly effective. It is one of the strongest forms of chlorine out there at 12.5%. If you're getting the Hasa returnables, they're at 12.5% in their strength. It's kind of hard to compare powder to liquid, but just note that 1 gallon of liquid chlorine is stronger than 1 pound of Cal Hypo. Cal Hypo used to be really affordable and inexpensive, but the price has, of course, gone up tremendously. So it's not probably going to be your lowest cost sanitizer. Of course, in Florida and some states, liquid chlorine definitely is really inexpensive, and it's the way to go. So if you're looking at pure cost, trichlor tablets and liquid chlorine would be my combination to sanitize the pool. And I would say, let's just say you're spending, you spend $200 for the bucket of tablets. Let's just break that in half. So that's $100 for that season. And then liquid chlorine, let's just say you're spending, I don't know, $30 a month for liquid chlorine. And then you could, of course, put that in the pool and use that. And you're spending maybe 30 times, let's say 5 months. So that's $250 for your sanitizer. And then you have the admaritic acid. Let's just add another $60 for that. So maybe $300 would be the cost for that season. And let's just take that over 5 years, just to be fair to the saltwater generator. So that's $1,500 over 5 years. Saltwater generator, I think you can probably get one for that price, roughly installed. So right there is 5 years worth just for the saltwater generator. Sometimes it's going to be a little more to install depending on the size of the saltwater generator, what it's rated for, and of course the installation process itself, how complicated it is, which brand you're getting. But I'm just going to say $1,500 just to be fair. So it would take about 5 years if you're doing it yourself, and you have, let's just say, a 14,000 gallon pool. That's a pretty fair amount of chemicals you're using in Southern California for that pool. So 5 years with the chemicals, with the saltwater generator. And then you may want to do this, you may not want to. You may want to add the cost of the replacement cell. Depending on the system, it could be anywhere from $600 to even over $1,000 for the cell to replace it after, I would say 4 years would be fair. So let's just say the saltwater generator after 4 years cost you, I'm going to say the cell was $800. So that's $1,500 plus $800, $2,300 for in a 4 year mark with the saltwater generator. You're still above what it would cost for the chlorine pool, and maybe over the course of 10 years it would even out. I'm not sure if that's even gonna happen at that point. The chemical costs are gonna, of course, go up every year slightly, and the saltwater generator costs will also go up every year as well with inflation. So it's kind of a wash at that point. So there is no initial savings with the saltwater generator. There is maybe a break-even point somewhere down the road. I'm not sure where. If you want to calculate that, you can do that. But the cost of a traditional chlorine pool is much less to maintain than a saltwater generator or a salt pool for that reason. Plus, you have to add salt occasionally, depending on your area. Sometimes a lot of salt, sometimes a little bit of salt. So there is some cost involved in that with adding salt to the pool. Something that's not talked about often is the corrosiveness of a saltwater pool. Now, the certain salt level I think is pretty safe and benign, but when the salt level gets above 4,500 parts per million, it can cause some corrosion of the pool equipment. Specifically, some heater parts, some check valve parts can be corroded, and there are some restrictions on draining a saltwater pool. Ironically, in Los Angeles County, you're not allowed to drain a saltwater pool into the storm drain, which is going into the ocean. I'm not sure why that is, but that's one of their restrictions. And we have something called the Coastal Commission here that kind of supersedes the city. And I think that's kind of weird that you can't drain a saltwater pool into somewhere where it's going into the ocean, which is a body of salt water. Anyway, that's just a little side note. But some cities won't let you drain a saltwater pool. You can drain a saltwater pool into the sewer system in your backyard, so that's perfectly fine, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me either. But basically, you have to check to make sure you can drain the saltwater pool legally in your area. And some areas, some high-end areas may even require you to pump it out with tanks, which would be weird as well. There are some corrosion aspects of saltwater pools, so just be aware of that. As far as a chlorine pool, there really isn't much of a corrosion issue, with one exception. If you're using trichlor tablets as your only sanitizer and you're overusing them, the pH of the tablet is like around 2. And if you're using, let's just give this example that you have a 14,000 gallon pool and you're putting 6 tablets in the floater. Can you put 6 tablets in a floater? You could probably squeeze in 5 and maybe, wedge the 6th one in there. They do make larger floaters, so you can logically do that. So you can put 5 or 6 tablets in a floater, let's just say. And if you're floating those every week, I would imagine the pH in that pool is going to be dropping down significantly to a point where it may even be below 7, 6.8 in pH, which could cause corrosion. So you can actually cause corrosion if you overuse trichlor as your primary sanitizer. You wouldn't have that problem with liquid chlorine or Cal Hypo. There really isn't any kind of acid in there. In fact, the pH of Cal Hypo is around 12. Liquid chlorine, the pH is higher as well than trichlor. So be aware that you can actually cause corrosion as well with a chlorine you're manually adding to the pool. It's not just a saltwater generator. But I don't think it's going to corrode the deck of the pool, the saltwater generator I'm speaking of, or a lot of equipment, unless you're over, 4,500 or 5,000 parts per million of salt in the pool. Let me talk a little bit about convenience factor, which is the primary reason why you wouldn't want to go to a saltwater pool. Now, things could happen in the saltwater pool that could cause problems as well, and it's not kind of just set it and forget it. You have to adjust the output, you have to make sure the salt cell is clean, and you have to make sure everything is running properly and you have the proper runtime of the salt system and the runtime of the pool. So there are these factors that could cause the saltwater system not to produce chlorine, much like you not adding chlorine to a chlorine pool. But in most cases, if the saltwater generator is being maintained by a pool professional, or if you're on top of it yourself as a do-it-yourself homeowner, you're not going to have too many issues where the chlorine is not being produced in the pool or not holding in the pool water. With a chlorine pool, this is where the problems arise. You could have a problem with not adding chlorine when you should add it or need to add it, which causes a multitude of problems to happen very rapidly in the summertime. The water could start developing algae. It could also get cloudy, which requires more and more chlorine to be added to kind of break that effect. And this gets really expensive. So I mentioned earlier that if you're just maintaining the pool with trichlor liquid chlorine and the pool is blue and clear and you're doing a great job maintaining it, or if you have a pool service maintaining the pool using just chlorine, that's perfectly fine. You shouldn't have too many issues with the pool having algae or turning green in that case. But if the pool does get cloudy, if it does get chloramines, or if it does turn green, then you're spending a lot of money to correct that with chlorine products, algicides, and things of that nature. So the cost of a chlorine pool can compound and get more expensive. I'll give you an example. I took over this account and they were having a lot of trouble maintaining this pool. The first problem was they were overusing trichlor tablets, so of course the cyanuric acid level was really high, and to counter that, a partial drain was needed. But the amount of chemicals that were stored at this pool was mind-boggling. I wish I took a photo of it. There was at least two 50-pound buckets of trichlor. Then there was a bucket of powdered granular Cal Hypo. They had these Home Depot liquid chlorine cases or boxes scattered about. I would say there was a good, back then it was a little less expensive, but a good $600 or $700 worth of chlorine, which in today's dollars would be over $1,000 of chlorine products back there, just to maintain this pool in the summertime. And it was kind of crazy that they were putting so much chlorine in there, and there was a lot of factors that they weren't aware of. And when I took over the pool, I corrected a lot of that and got everything back in shape, and the chlorine usage dropped dramatically down to about 5% of what they were actually using in their pool every week to try to keep it balanced. So that's kind of the other end of a chlorine pool, is that if things get out of hand, which they can rapidly get out of hand, you're spending a lot of money to correct that. Whereas with a salt pool, since it's putting chlorine in there every day, and if you set it correctly, you're going to have a good free chlorine level all the time. You're not going to have these problems where you're adding a ton of chlorine or algicide products to the pool to bring it back into shape, because technically it shouldn't get out of shape and turn green or get cloudy on you if it's being maintained correctly and the system is working. So the convenience factor is something where the saltwater generator has the definite edge over a chlorine pool. You don't have to worry about adding the chemicals to the pool. All you have to do is set the generator to produce the chlorine and to come on and do that. And the chlorine pool is something that requires more maintenance. And of course, if you have a pool pro, they can either take care of your pool with a saltwater generator and make sure it's operating correctly each week, or add the proper amount of chlorine to the pool to maintain that pool. That's why I mentioned earlier that in the least, a chemical-only service would be a great idea if you're unsure of how to balance your chlorine pool. And I think the saltwater pool does have that convenience factor that wins over a chlorine pool and costs putting all costs aside, if you are someone who's looking for convenience and want to have your pool swim ready all the time, a saltwater pool would not be a bad choice for you. But if you're budget conscious and if you don't mind adding the chlorine or having a company do it for you, then a chlorine pool is perfectly fine as well. There's nothing that I can say that would say that a saltwater pool is better than a chlorine pool, and I don't think a chlorine pool necessarily is better than a saltwater pool. I think it's all based on your circumstance, your level of convenience, and what you want to actually do and how you want to maintain your pool with the proper sanitizer each week. If you're looking for other podcasts that I've recorded, you can find those on my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. On the banner, click on the podcast icon. There'll be a menu of other podcasts I've recorded. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. This episode is brought to you by Hasa, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.